What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, talking today about the bad games of 2023, because this has been a uniquely fantastic year. I've actually been talking a lot in videos recently about how I've kind of been reflecting on how incredible it is that we got so many back-to-back 10 out of 10 releases. In fact, when I did my typical video of top 10 best games of the year, I cheated and put 15 different games in that video. But normally, in every year, I do a best list and a worst list, talking about the games that are absolute dumpster fires. But this year, I want to do something a tiny bit different. Instead of talking about the games that just downright suck, the games that are broken messes or actually unplayable like the day before, I wanted to talk about the games that disappointed me, that looked good and turned out to kind of suck. Okay, so let's actually try and dive deep. I'm sure somebody's going to get offended by this video, so be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. All right, with that being said, it's time to go swimming in the trash. These are my picks of the top 10 most disappointing games in 2023. Number 10, Payday 3. When it comes to video game sequels, it seems like such an easy slam dunk. If you're making a follow-up to a already beloved entry, you just make more of it. More maps, more guns, more cool flashy spell effects, that kind of stuff. Well, somehow Payday 3 is dramatically worse than Payday 2. It actually has less heists, the gameplay is not as refined, and the servers have been completely broken. Yes, that's right, this game was actually unplayable for weeks at a time. I've been trying to play this here and there, and between the huge content patches that are supposed to be fixing it, I'm constantly left scratching my head and going, why did they even release this? Now, Payday 3 is not a completely broken mess. It actually is pretty playable, but it's pretty obvious that if you're looking for a fun time, something you can play with your friends and rob some banks, you're much better off playing Payday 2, which is so weird to think about. Payday 3 is on Game Pass, and really, I'd say it's better to buy Payday 2 than install this really unfinished blob. Number 9, Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. It's very obvious that Ubisoft has been working hard to try and make better games than perhaps they've created in the last decade. Now, I'm not saying that Ubisoft is a bad company or particularly lazy, but their games have a very generic feel to them. A lot of times a particular Assassin's Creed compared to a Watch Dogs, compared to a Far Cry, they all kind of blend together, for better or for worse. But I really felt like they were trying their best to go outside the box with Avatar here, and it still doesn't quite hit the mark. Now, I do say this, but apparently the Avatar fanboys are completely in love with this game, but to me, it's just a glorified tech demo. It's another game that's just a huge checklist of weird objectives. All right, take down 5 bases, shoot some mechs, upgrade your bow, go to the next area, shoot 5 more mechs, take down 5 more bases. I mean, the hippie narrative of it is kind of at least standout compared to other Ubisoft originals, but even with how much they definitely tried with Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, it's the kind of game that I just feel like it's not really worth the price tag. I played a lot of this game, and by the end of it, I was just really bored, if I'm being honest. Number 8, Exoprimal. Across the gaming industry, there is these particular publishers that people love the most. There's fans for stuff like Square Enix or Insomniac, and a personal favorite of mine has been Capcom. I mean, this last decade, I have been blown away by what they've done with stuff like Devil May Cry, obviously Monster Hunter, and of course Resident Evil, which is part of why I was so deeply confused by Exoprimal. This is a co-op shooter that's online only, where you and a bunch of people in mech suits are fighting off waves of dinosaurs. Now, the entire premise of this is not particularly bad, but the whole whole idea of it, I don't know, it's just not fun. It doesn't really feel fleshed out. The amount of money they spent developing all this battle passes and cosmetic skins and goofiness, I just wish they made a Dino Crisis remake instead. Now, again, I'm not saying that Exoprimal is the worst game I've played, but the entirety of my hours with it, I just kept asking, why does this exist? It's not particularly exciting, it's not really that unique, it's just another generic online shooter that's meant to get you to buy that premium battle pass. Number 7. Atlas Fallen. So I know there's a good chance you probably haven't even heard of this game, but let me break down why it's a disappointment even if you've never installed it. So Atlas Fallen has us playing as these people that are nameless, this faction of people that are pretty much just indentured servants. When one day, when cast out into the desert during a storm, instead of dying, which is pretty much a death sentence, you stumble upon a gauntlet that gives you different magical abilities. The ability to surf on sand, or make spikes come out of your fist, or do all sorts of crazy cool blade attacks. Atlas Fallen is an open world game that is very focused on the premise of saving these people and overthrowing this evil kingdom. The problem is that it just doesn't feel very high budget, which feels like a very mean thing to say, but a lot of times, like, the combos are decent, but they're never thrilling. A lot of the set pieces are kind of cool, but also kind of bland. You're pretty much just sectioned from one place to the next. I mean, this is the kind of game that I feel like had tremendous ambition and some really cool trailers, but when it came out, it's a very 6 out of 10 game. I mean, if you're looking for something that's actually going to impress you for 20 minutes, it's the kind of game that if you found this on Game Pass or PlayStation Plus, install it and tinker with it for an hour, but really try to sit down and beat it is not worth your time. Number 6. Wanted Dead. There's a term that's thrown around a lot in the horror genre, which is called schlock. It essentially means being cheesy on purpose, having exploding heads or goofy one-liners or sometimes really flat dialogue by design. And I believe that what they were attempting to do with Wanted Dead is create a lot of schlock. We're playing as these bad guys that are in prison on death row that are being pulled out of prison for impossible missions, and they're all very silly characters. I like their design. I like their very terrible line reading. Like, I feel like you can hear the microphone when these guys are reading their lines. It's that low budget. The problem is that Wanted Dead is terribly unfun. I mean, whether you're trying to do the melee combos or the dodges or throwing grenades or shooting, like, everything in it is so stiff. Like, this is the kind of game that you can play for hours and it never feels smooth or conducive. Like, this is one of those kind of games where I do think the story, the silliness, the actual humor lands, even if some of the jokes are unintentional and you're laughing at the game, but you can't just have jokes. You actually need to be a game if you're gonna make a game. Number 5. Diablo 4. A major aspect of gaming that's been stirring up so much controversy in 2023 has been the idea of live service games. Stuff that doesn't just have cosmetic microtransactions and daily login bonuses and stuff, but just beyond that. Games that mean for you to play them forever. They want to be the only game you play. Now, this goes beyond stuff like Call of Duty or Fortnite or, I don't know, Crash Royale. It actually goes beyond that. A lot of people have been unhappy with the rollout of Diablo 4. Now, I say this as a person that has 400 hours in the game and an actual Diablo tattoo. This game could have been a lot better. It's decent, it's fun, and the story is, in my opinion, some of the best that Blizzard has ever made. The problem is that Diablo 4 is based on seasons. Every time you play this, it's warping and changing. Constant updates and patches and complete overhauls that can make a character that you've put hundreds of hours into playing instantly stronger or weaker or a god. This is so annoying is that we now exist in an era where if a company goes bankrupt, your character may just get deleted. The game can cease to exist. And beyond that, now they can reach into your save file and make the person that you leveled up dramatically suckier. Diablo 4 is not a complete train wreck, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that it's just so disappointing to watch them have to just figure this out via trial and error. Diablo 4 is going to be like amazing in 2 or 3 years, but as it stands, I cannot believe how much they completely fumbled the bag. Number 4. The Last of Us PC. Let me start this entry off with a question that I feel is actually important, which is this. When should we forgive a company for releasing a game that is purposefully broken? Because when The Last of Us came out on PC, it literally didn't work. It crashed, the shaders were completely busted, it was just completely unfinished, character models looked totally different. Now, if you had an extremely high-end PC, you probably wouldn't notice, but they just dropped this knowing that it was a complete wreck. Also, I'm sorry that my face is here on the screen. This is actually footage that I recorded back on launch day when the game straight up didn't work. Now, I have a good computer and it would not work, especially when I tried to play this on Steam Deck. They claimed this was Steam Deck verified, which means it runs on it. That was just a bald-faced lie. I cannot believe that Naughty Dog looked at this and went, yeah, that's ready to go. In fact, they released multiple apologies later, straight up admitting that the game was undone, but they wanted to release it in time for the Last of Us TV show. Stuff like this is the problem with the gaming industry, is that so much of it is focusing on quotas and timelines and investment quarters. Release a game when it's ready to go, or else you're just going to end up losing in the end. Number 3. Redfall. Microsoft has been in a very weird spot with the Xbox Series X ever since it came out. It's not that it lacks games, but there hasn't been those huge AAA exclusives that PlayStation's had and Nintendo's had. And because of it, obviously, the console sales of the Xbox are dramatically behind. In fact, in some areas of the world, the PlayStation 5 is outselling the Xbox 7-1, which is completely bonkers to think about. And I think part of that comes down to games like Redfall. This was a co-op vampire shooter that was supposed to be something that was going to be interesting and different by Arcane. This is a legendary studio that's made some of the best stealth action ever. And yet this came out and it was, again, a completely busted mess. Vampires couldn't see you sometimes, the AI was terrible, the gameplay itself was repetitious, a lot of times just having you kill mini bosses over and over again until you unlock that next main objective. Redfall sucks. I mean, it just downright to its very DNA is a bad game. Now, I know they've done some stuff to try and fix it since then, and they've finally made it 60 FPS like 6 months after launch, but my problem is the fact that, again, stop pushing stuff out because you're trying to hit some sort of arbitrary deadline. If you released Redfall feature complete in 2024, maybe people would have been impressed by it. Maybe you could have put an actual picture of it on the Xbox Series X box and sold a couple more consoles. Instead, this is a release that's already forgotten. Number 2. Forspoken. It's so interesting to kind of ponder how multifaceted video games are. You can have games that tell great stories, or have big vistas, or nice combat and cool leveling trees, or really immersive universes. But also, a particular bad spot of a game can drag down the entire experience. Forspoken is not the worst game I've ever played, but it probably has some of the worst writing I've ever seen. This has constant, pure cringe of, yeah, I just moved that object with my freaking mind. Lots of weird, on-the-nose, self-aware snark and cringe dialogue. I mean, oh my gosh. Forspoken is one of those games that I feel like is trying so hard to be an edgy teenager, or I mean, I can't even tell what they were trying to achieve. This game bombed so hard, the studio that made it actually closed. And I'll say it, I feel bad about that. I wish they had gotten a chance to, I don't know, make a different project, but man, Square Enix has been picking up a lot of W's with Final Fantasy, both 7, 16, and now 14, getting all the expansions and stuff, but sometimes Square Enix drops the fattest L you've ever seen. Forspoken is just a dumpster fire. And even if you actually talk about the combat itself, it's not really interesting or innovative or really anything even worth talking about. Forspoken is the kind of game where I see people defend it and I'm actually confused. Play better games. My God. Number 1. Starfield. This game is just so catastrophically boring, and that sucks. I mean, I'm a big fan of Bethesda because their games have been so groundbreaking, so influential. Fallout and Skyrim have been not only some of the best Western RPGs of all time, but games that personally I've loved a lot. And I guess it's just bizarre to think that Starfield is the best they could come up with. Now, I've had a phrase I've put in videos in the past, which is that when it comes to gaming, it's better to be bad than boring. If your game is bad enough, if it's a hot enough dumpster fire, it's kind of entertaining to pick it apart, to figure out what exactly went wrong. But Starfield, it's just bland. It's big empty planets, it's half-decent shooting, it's very cyclical dialogue that isn't particularly fun or engaging. Like, Starfield has some decent moments to it, but if you were hoping for the next Skyrim, that's not what this is. This is just a bunch of load screens in space. And I feel bad that this game has already just been so left in the rearview mirror. The modding community is even giving up on it. It's wild to think that everybody who was excited for Starfield seems to have realized that classic Bethesda is gone. Maybe when they come out with a couple expansions, this will be in a better spot, but man, I cannot believe how much this game just left me sitting there with a controller in my hand, literally falling asleep. I put 40 hours into this game, and I kind of just wish I had that time back because it's just not worth it. Even on Game Pass, it's not really worth the install. Starfield, you're not the worst game I've played this year, not by a long shot, but you are by far the most disappointing. Hopefully the next Bethesda release is, a bit more fun. Remember when games were fun? Ugh. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a like. And if there's anything in here that you believe does not deserve its scorn, if you think some of these games are actually good enough to not be getting roasted by me, tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and most importantly, keep dreaming. All right, time to do another 15 playthroughs of Resident Evil 4. If you haven't watched it, I did do a video of my most played games in 2024, and I also did a video of my, or not 2024, I did a video of my most played games in 2023 and my favorite games of 2023. I was waiting to record this video till I stopped being sick, but, I was like, all right, I've been sick for a minute. Let me just go ahead and make a video because I can't wait forever. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.